Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice career. I'm Dr. Peter Weinstein, one of the co-hosts of the Veterinary Business Podcast. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing strategies, leadership development, HR for best practices, and much, much more. So whether you're a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, a practice manager, a veterinary student, or just somebody interested in the veterinary profession, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. And remember, you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and any of those popular podcast platforms that are out there. Today, I am excited to talk to Dr. Gershon Alaluf, a respected colleague, business leader, and a long-term friend. I don't have a lot, so here's one of them. Our topic today is Let's Talk Leadership. Now, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of today's discussion, let's get to learn a little bit more about Dr. G. Welcome, Dr. G.
Good morning, Dr. Peter Weinstein. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So you and I have known each other for a while. We are both University of Illinois alums.
Go Illini.
And, but it's interesting. We spend a lot of time talking about family. We spend a lot of time talking about practice, but I'm not really sure I know how you got from Illinois and UNC Wilmington to Southern California. So first of all, were you one of these like Barbie and Ken dolls that decided you wanted to become a veterinarian when you were a little boy?
No. Maybe. My parents were into miniature poodles, and we had a few growing up, and we had a veterinarian that was literally 2 blocks from our house that we'd walk them there. My dog was not putting on weight. We used to see little pieces of rice in the poop. Had no idea what it was. And of course, growing up in South Florida, fleas were awful. We used to use garlic powder back in the day for the flea prevention. Mm-hmm. So finally we went to a different vet, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, your dog's had tapeworm for 9 years." And that's where I was like, wow, this guy really is able to work with animals. I've always had an affinity for animals more than people. I think most veterinarians feel that way. But it wasn't until 1990 when I was in Wilmington that I started as a kennel boy. My dog in undergrad was always at the emergency clinic or at the vet so much that I decided to apply for a job. So there I was in UNC Wilmington. I was a swimmer on scholarship and working as well, full time, as much as I could actually, as a kennel boy. Over the 5 years, I went from kennel boy to vet assistant to lead vet tech assistant. I wasn't licensed, to practice manager. And while I was working those 5 years, I had 2 amazing mentors. Dr. Bob Whedon, who was at University of Illinois for a while as a professor, and Dr. Philip Lanzi. And they taught me so much. But the funny thing was that my first day as kennel boy, I went home and talked to my girlfriend at the time, and I said, "This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life." I haven't looked back since 1990. Everything changed, In high school, I was going to be a professional swimmer. And as soon as I worked there that first day, I decided this is what I got to do. I got my act together, got my grades going, ended up at Illinois for an interview. And that's where I met my wife. We met at the interview. And we were dating and during vet school, but it wasn't until the end of freshman year where we were kind of talking about, okay, what are we going to do with our lives? I was like, well, I'm going to go back down to Florida. I want to live in the Keys. I want to live the Jimmy Buffett lifestyle. And she's like, well, I want to go work with my dad in Huntington Beach. So that's how I ended up in California. I couldn't say no to that. Can't say I sacrificed a lot because Southern California is an amazing place to live and practice veterinary medicine. But it really it was a grind. You had to find the right practice, you had to find the right fit, you had to find the right clients. Um, so once I got out here, I think it was between you and Dr. Mark Kopit, and I ended up in Laguna Beach with Dr. John Hamill, who in my mind is another one who's up on those pillars of amazing mentors. And that's where I ended up for 25 years.
So I didn't actually realize that you came from South Florida, but I won't hold that against you. I have a couple of questions that I want to unpack from your background. Do you
Yeah.
feel that being a competitive swimmer, and as you know, I had a daughter that was a competitive swimmer as well. Do you feel that having been a competitive swimmer, it helped you understand time management and gave you some leadership skills and also helped you in working and being a part of a team?
I think when it comes down to youth sports in general, youth sports are huge for anybody. I was a single child, so my swim team was also kind of my family. Swimming is an individual sport, but you compete as a team. So even if you had a bad swim, you would still be rooting on all your teammates to have good swims. Uh, Time management was huge. High school, you can't ask me about the high school time management stuff because, like I said, I wanted to be a professional swimmer. Swim, 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 and school came second. But, in college, for sure, and I'm sure your daughter would say the same, if you don't have time management at a D1 level swim program, you're going to be in trouble. I was team captain in high school. I was team captain for 2 years in college. Um, but the biggest thing that competitive swimming taught me was it gave me a huge fear of failure. So my biggest fear in life is letting people down. My biggest fear in life is not being able to support my family, not being able to turn the lights on at work, you name it. So I would say from a competitive athlete standpoint, it gives you that drive to advance and keep advancing and keep advancing. My parents were the type that's like, well, oh, I'm going to quit swimming. Well, they're like, okay, so what are you going to pick up next? Or, what are you going to do? Because you're not going to come home. You're not going to sit at home. You're not going to go play at the beach. You're not going to go, do these things. You got to figure out what you're going to do. I remember one time my father, who had his PhD in economics from Oxford, I came home and I said, I'm not going to go to college. He said, well, I think the military recruiting office is right down the street. So, so I think I've always had that push behind me. I've had that great leadership behind me as far as coaches, as far as parents, as far as friends. I'm all into, not more of a transformational type leadership. That's not this marketing leadership, not this, you do this, this, and this. I want to work together as a team. I think working as a team is how you create great success. Um, and I think somewhere along the line in our profession, we've lost that vision.
Yeah, we'll talk about vision in just a minute, but yeah, I absolutely concur with you regarding vision. And I do think, having watched Brianna grow up as a swimmer, and that fear of failure is huge, and that competitive mindset, it drives you every day. She's in sales now, and it drives her every day. And hey, let's be honest, veterinary medicine is just another sales job, and it drives people like yourself every day. Not everybody's got that same drive. Um, so you said you met your wife, Amy, at the U of I. during the interview process, were you interviewing her or was she interviewing you?
We were both getting interviewed for acceptance, but I think I hope I won that interview. It's a funny story, and she'll probably kill me for saying it, but I don't have a filter, as you said. Um, we were sitting there, and Dr. Irvin Small was about to give a speech,
Love
and
her.
yep, he was amazing. And we're sitting there, and I hear this voice in the back of me saying, "Man, I hope I get into vet school." I was like, and everyone's like, "Why?" She's like, at that time we took the VCAT, right, to get into Illinois.
Hmm.
She's like, "I got a 12% on the English." And I turned around and I go, "Oh, thank God, I got a 16." So we hit it off right there. So we don't speak good English in the house, but that's okay.
As long as you can sing Jimmy Buffett, right?
That's right. That's all that matters. And have a margarita.
Favorite favorite Jimmy Buffett song?
Oh my gosh. A pirate looks at 40.
Okay. So we have a lot of things in common. Again, both went to Illinois, but we also both worked with Dr. John Hamill. And I would suggest that John deserves to be on a pedestal. John is a great leader. He's a great mentor. He's a great influencer. He has had a tremendous amount of impact on me. And I will honestly say that there is no way that I would be sitting here having this conversation with you if I hadn't met John, worked for John. John bailed me out of my first job, which was a nightmare, and gave me my third job, but helped me find my second. And we've been friends since 19, when you were still in high school, basically. So great guy, great mentor, great influencer. I think you were maybe the third associate after me that went and worked for John. And it's a great, very small practice. I mean, 1,200 square feet on Laguna Canyon Road, impossible to get into and out of during the summer, but still kicked butt when it came down to quality medicine and being a standout veterinary clinic in a very competitive marketplace of Laguna Beach, California. Now you were there as an associate for a number of years, and then what what motivated you to want to own the practice? What was your entrepreneurial seizure?
Uh, well, that's a good question. I've always, because of my father being an economist, I always watched Wall Street Week Review, the nightly business report. So business was always in me, since I guess I could walk. Um, I've always I came out knowing I was going to own a practice. I came out knowing I wanted to do general practice. I came out knowing that I wanted to make a difference in not only the animals' lives but the clients' lives. And when John gave me the opportunity to purchase the practice in '05, I didn't look back. I mean, it was a perfect situation. Very productive practice, very efficient practice, very progressive practice. Um, because of John, I was able to go. I mean, I was doing endoscopy and bronchoscopy, and I was doing ultrasounds, and I started doing lymphoma treatments, and then I obviously he's really huge in the show world and the reproduction, and I didn't sign up for it but I became a very, very good reproduction guy. There were so many things that we offered out of that 1,200 square feet that a lot of general practices just did not. And John, he's the one. It was funny. The one thing, and I love him to death, and I don't hold this against him, but he doesn't know business. And the one thing in the back of my mind was like, gosh, if this place is doing so well with people, a doctor in charge that doesn't know business, maybe my little bit of business that I have, I could even take it further. So I looked at it as a huge opportunity to advance the practice and still create a difference in the community. And that's what we were able to do together.
So, like myself, we both went to veterinary school, and when I went to vet school, business class was an elective taught in the um, bottom of the large animal clinic. I think it was LAC 80 by videotape, VHS in those days. Being the offspring of a PhD economist from Oxford, that had to be somewhat distressing to have virtually no business education. You had it in your genes, but it wasn't being transferred into your brain. So, did you do anything to enhance your understanding of business besides what came naturally while you were working and building up as an associate, or did you just kind of just come through osmosis and genetics? Was it nature, nurture, or a little bit of both?
I think it was kind of the chirping in the background, always hearing my dad, going talking to me, but it was also trial and error. I mean, you know, we haven't, and I'll hopefully get into this later, but we haven't perfected veterinary medicine. We're practicing veterinary medicine. And also, when it comes to business ownership, you need to be able to man up to your mistakes, but more importantly, learn from your mistakes. Did I make mistakes? Oh, man, I made so many mistakes. But that was because I was trying to be this hotshot young entrepreneur, veterinarian, progressive practice, very successful. But at some point, I learned humility, and I learned that I'm not going to make everybody happy. I learned that if I just do my best, I'm open, honest, and a good communicator, my business will thrive. Um, you know, I, as far as you, at least you had a class. We had a Saturday morning from 8 to 11 a.m. on contracts. That's as far as the business that they taught our cohort of veterinary students. And it was taught by a large animal veterinarian, Dr. Benson. And I remember sitting there listening to his contract ideas, and I was like, man, that just sounds old school, you know. And then you came in. I think I first met you in 95, 96. You were doing one of your talks at the school. And I was finally like, that's the guy I need to talk to. That's the guy I need to meet. That's the guy that's thinking ahead. You know, he sees Dead Man's Curve coming up, 4 miles in advance instead of right when you see the sign. And so it's just a matter of networking, talking to people, learning from others, knowing that even though you do probably know a lot, there's so much more to learn. But it, as far as a business sense from education in vet school, it's zero.
Wasn't Benson an anesthesiologist?
Yeah,
Yeah,
excuse
so
me. Yeah, he put people to sleep.
he put
That's
people
right.
to sleep on a Saturday morning. Um, as you're describing your drive to ownership and through ownership, you also gave an interesting discussion of actually moving from manager to leader. And that was the humility. Leaders are humble, managers are not. So I think when you started the practice, you were probably being a very good manager, but maybe not a very good leader. But when you, through trial and error, mostly error, um, you got the humility needed. And John was very humble from that standpoint, especially when it came down to the business side. Um, and you probably saw that with Dr. Bob and Dr. Phil. So I think the humility finally came out once you started to believe in yourself more. And that's when you became a leader. That's my assessment of things.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, it there was a point where I was just making all my employees so upset. And I think I had uh, a moment with my wife and my office manager, Sarah, who was amazing as well. They're like, you need to change your ways or this is going to fit. And of course, at that point, I was very defensive, which is an absolute, you know, human thing to do. But then, over the next few months, I started to change the way I was. And I made, I made, I'd love to think that I made the practice a fun place to be, a safe place to be. My door was always open to every one of my employees if they ever needed to talk to me about anything. I didn't have any walls up. I didn't judge. I didn't try to hold anything against anyone. Um, I love listening to their ideas of how to make things better. Because one of the things is a lot of times people talk about, well, how do you implement this into your practice? How do you change things in practice? How do you change something to make sure that it sticks? Well, make it their idea. Let them come up with it. I mean, yes, they don't have, the higher education and all that, but they these guys are very creative. They come up with great ways to make the practice more efficient, make the clients love it. The idea that someone had to put a coffee bar up front was huge. Clients would just come in, get a cup of coffee, and talk to everyone. They didn't even have an animal. That's when you know your practice is good. That's when you know you created that family atmosphere. That's when you know you've most importantly gotten their trust. And the thing is, right now, I, I I look at a lot of practices, and it's cold, right? There's not this mom pop, hey, let's be a team together. It's me, you, your companion, your family. Let's all work together. Let's educate everyone on the situation. Let's come up with the best plan. It's a problem we're dealing with, and it really upsets me because veterinary medicine, besides my family, is my second biggest love in the world. And this profession is the greatest profession that you could get into, besides, in my opinion, teaching. Um, my heart goes out to all those teachers that do their best to educate all these young minds to become something. Um, and I don't think we're celebrating the profession enough anymore. I think and it comes a lot down to how many, how many veterinarians, how many veterinary technicians, how many veterinary receptionists, kennel people drive to work and their skin just starts burning because they have to go to work. It's not, it's not a joy for them anymore. And, the thing is, I think it has a lot to do with the leadership or lack of, or the leaders who think they're good leaders, unfortunately, don't listen to anybody else. Um, and they're, in my opinion, and it's a shame, they're missing out on a lot of great ideas that could make them very successful.
I appreciate your comments. It's, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, it's very rare that I get to hear Dr. G in a humble fashion, so I'm very pleased to hear this today from that standpoint. By the way, G, veterinarians are teachers too. And in fact, that's part of what we do well. Leaders are teachers, veterinarians are leaders in many cases. So I do think all of this is part of what we need to do to celebrate the profession. And I would agree with you 100%. We don't advocate for ourselves. We don't look at all of the great things that we do. We are so, in many cases, tied down to the transaction that's in front of us that we don't recognize the relationships that we need to build and the trusts that we need to build. So, and it does take leadership to have that vision. And I think, in my opinion, there's a couple of things. I believe we have a paucity of leadership in veterinary medicine. There's an SAT word. So if you don't know what it means a lack of.
I got a 16. Let me get my dictionary.
And I think we have a lack of leadership. I don't think we take the time in most of the veterinary curriculum to teach leadership. And I think even as young doctors and associates, if you are not in the right practice, you don't see leadership. You see managership. You see numbers, but you see the what, but not the why. And I think all of this makes the comment that you made about staff members who go to work because they have a job but they don't go to work because they're excited. And I think we need to bring some of that excitement back to the veterinary profession. And I really do think it's going to start with the independent practices because they have the ability to move and change much more rapidly than some of the national corporations. And so here's my political plug for those people who are listening. Independent practices are the next renaissance in veterinary medicine, and I would strongly advocate that although we do have a place for national companies, I think the leadership will ultimately come from those independent practices who set the tone, set the direction, and have the vision for what veterinary medicine will look down the road. And to quote some biblical resource, without a vision, people perish. And if we don't start to develop a vision, I have, as you noted, some concerns about the veterinary profession. So your passion about veterinary medicine is oozing, either that or it's a cat bite abscess. And I really do think I appreciate your passion from that standpoint. But I have a question for you. You're a young guy, and you had an opportunity during the pandemic and you took advantage of it. You took advantage of an opportunity to sell, which, based upon all the passion and everything you just talked to me about, had to be a really difficult decision. So, talk me through how you went from wanting to really make a huge difference in your community to becoming I hate to say it, a veterinary overnight millionaire.
Well, the thing was, you always told me as a veterinary owner, practice owner, you wear three hats, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're a manager, and you're a doctor. COVID, I made it very clear to everybody. If I hear anyone say, hey, we can't get you in, we're too busy, you might as well just put out your resume somewhere else. Um, we were busy, 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 busy. Animals do not choose when they get sick, to quote Dr. John Him, right? I'm in this profession to make a difference. Like I said, in animals' lives and their family, the family that own the animals' lives. And that really took its toll as a manager, right? We had to pivot this, pivot that. We're in California, this rule, that rule, all these rules. We were, a first responder, top of the line. We could see, no, veterinarians really are not. Yes, they are. Veterinarians need to close. No, they can stay open. Um, I took out a PPP loan because immediately the pandemic hit. Any business person immediately went back to 2008, right? Okay, what the heck's going to happen? The government's giving something for small business, took out the PPP loan, not knowing that I was going to be working 70 hours a week, not knowing that I was going to have to hire more people, not knowing that I was going to be busier than I've ever been in my life. Um, the entrepreneur side of me, because I didn't close down for 2 weeks and have a quarter within the pandemic that I lost money. The state of California decided, hey, it's a good idea. Let's tax this PPP loan, even though the federal government completely wrote it off. So that was a huge thing for me. The entrepreneur in me also was offered money that everything has a price tag, right? You gotta, people always ask me, you're so passionate and you want to do all this stuff. But the thing is, from the COVID standpoint, I was tired. From the managerial standpoint, I was tired. From the entrepreneurial standpoint, they're like, here's all this money. Okay. It wasn't an easy decision. Of course, my wife's like, sell, go, let's go. We can go live our lives. But for me, I knew I didn't want to leave the profession. Um, and I wanted to continue to work as a doctor and still make a difference. But I didn't want to have to worry about the paying this bill, paying that bill, this credit card, that credit card, this SBA loan, this other, line of credit. I didn't want to worry about that stuff anymore. Um, and the funny thing is, looking back, I miss it a lot. Um, For those who are listening, I did retire December 29th from practicing. I figured 34 years within the clinic walls was pretty good. That's so a lot of people would call that a career. But the one thing is the people that did buy me frustrated me, upset me, you name it, so much that I actually went to Pepperdine and got my MBA. Right. And and because I thought I wasn't doing it right. I was looking at the way they were doing it. You know, they're all about transactional leadership. They're all about the bottom line. I'm blown away that they look at revenue almost on a daily basis to figure out how much staff needs to be there the next day. And I'm like, this is not a dry cleaner. This is not a car wash. You don't know what's going to come in the door. You don't know how many people you need. Look at it quarterly. Look at it semi-annually. You know, there's busy seasons, there's slow seasons. Not as much as like other places because allergies and fleas in Southern California are year round. Same with South Florida, same with Southern Texas. But they would be looking at it on a daily basis. And that really got frustrating. Um, so, you know, and the thing is that as I got my MBA, I was looking at the things they were doing and I realized, holy cow, I really need to get out of here and try to go make a difference within the profession, but outside the clinic. So that's the reason why, you know, I'm happy I sold, of course. I'm happy, you know, from the entrepreneur side. I'm devastated as a doctor. The manager thing is, it can go either way. But you know, the thing is, I the 2 years I did work, um, I was able to go back to doing the things I love, which was spend more time in the rooms with the clients, talking to them about their families, asking them about their kids' careers. By the time I left, I was on the third generation of family members that were coming in to see me. I was able to teach a bunch of tech students that were in the RVT programs a whole bunch of stuff. And they're like, gosh, you really helped prepare me. I have 3 RVTs that just passed their exams at the second practice I owned. Um, from the veterinary standpoint, I officially, as of October, had gotten 20 former employees into vet school, mentored them into vet school. That's a third of a class from when I was a veterinarian, right? Um, so, you know, I regret selling? I would say 30% of me says yes, but I have bigger fish to fry now. And that's what I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do, have the time to do, have the resources to do. And that's what I'm looking forward to in the future.
You know, dude, you sound like me. First of all, you got an MBA, as I did. And second of all, I left the profession in many ways because, from a practice standpoint, because I wanted to make a bigger difference. I wrote an article when I was the president of SCVMA, Southern California VMA, in 1997 that was entitled essentially Veterinarians Equal Dilbert, because we live in a cubicle. It may be 1,200 square feet or 3,000 square feet, but we really, in most cases, have no clue what's going on outside of our cubicle. And when you have the time and the opportunity through leadership, through involvement, through reading, through talking, to recognize the world in which we practice veterinary medicine, the world in which we practice live, and expand from there, you realize that there's a whole big world we live in that we're so tired during the day that we don't get to pay attention to. And you get home and well, in your case, your wife's a veterinarian as well. But somebody says, well, how was your day? Fine, I don't want to talk about it because you're so tired. Well, now I spend most of my time talking about the veterinary profession from a global standpoint, 35,000-foot standpoint, after having lived in it at the 5-inch standpoint, as did you. And I think we tend to look at it through a microscope. And so much of the last 2 years, when you were an employee which is never easy to go from owner to employee as well. As an employee, all of a sudden, it sounds like you spent a good deal of time looking at the profession through a microscope. And that encouraged you to get that MBA. What is it that you saw under the microscope? Was it roundworms, hookworms, whipworms, heartworm disease, or maybe it was lack of heart disease that kind of motivates you to want to make a bigger difference? Something happened that really motivated you to get out of your cubicle, Dilbert, and make yourself into a greater leader. What is it that, what's your gut feeling that's motivating you to the next level?
Well, I was getting my MBA, and it was funny because every professor would always ask, last day of class, what did you learn from this class? My answer was always the same. I realized I don't care about marketing anymore. I don't care about accounting anymore. I don't care about entrepreneurship anymore. I don't care about strategy anymore. From a personal standpoint, I don't want to do it for me. Now, will I help other young professionals? Absolutely. That's where my heart goes. The one class I did not want to take, and it was a core, was organizational management and leadership. And guess what? That's the one I fell in love with. That's the one that made me realize how, I don't want to say there's poor leadership, but there's a complete lack of leadership from the top down in our profession. There's, I'm not going to pick on corporate versus private. I'm just going to say in general. In general, there's a lot of things we need to do differently. I was approached by a professor and the dean of the MBA program is like, hey, we've never had a veterinarian want to go ahead and get their doctorate in business administration. Would you be interested? I'm like, absolutely. So now I'm becoming a scholar practitioner, right? I've worked the problem. I see where the problems are. And I mean, there's so many, it's hard to, but I'm going from the leadership standpoint. And the biggest thing over the last 9 months, I've come to the conclusion is, just not a conclusion, but just it opened my mind, is that back in the late 1800s, the profession started. It was started by mostly men. There's a whole bunch of men, right? Now you look where we are now, and there's been this gender shift, right? We're mostly female, which, hey, I have 3 daughters. My wife's a veterinarian. I am all for women power and all that stuff. But we haven't changed the way we do things, right? And there's evidence all over the place that, unfortunately, men and women do things differently. They digest things differently. They take things in differently. They talk differently. We all think the same, but how it works at a microscopic level within the body is completely different. And I think one of the biggest things we need to do is we need to change the way we're educating these kids. We need to get ahead of burnout. And from a leadership standpoint, once someone's burned out, you're not going to bring them back unless you make a change. If I said, hey, Peter, you came up to me, you said you're burned out. Here's a 1-month vacation on me. Go to Hawaii, go de-stress, get it all out of you. You'll come back tan, happy, maybe 15 pounds heavier. But if you start working there and there's been no changes, leadership has made no changes, you're going to get triggered again, right? So my thing is now, from the leadership standpoint, I want to reach out to these leaders, and very importantly, I want to hit these young professionals being like, okay, let's make a change. Let's change the way we're doing this. Let's change the way, we're training our staff. We're gonna change the way Pay is good. I mean, the one thing I have to say about being corporately owned is that veterinarians are getting paid more money, but they're getting paid better than they were in the past, which is nice. So I'm not really looking at, that type of stuff, but I'm looking at imposter syndrome. I'm looking at, personal relationships at home and in work. I have three daughters. I know how mean girls can be to each other. They can be, and that needs to be worked on. I mean, I found an article this morning, and it was in the Oxford Business Journal, and it was about how all these young millennial Gen Zers want to be perfectionists, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I just did a literary search and I typed in veterinary and perfectionism. I was blown away, the pages of research articles on how veterinarians want to be perfectionists, right? And as I said before, we're practicing medicine. We haven't perfected it. We're practicing law. Lawyers haven't perfected law. And so the thing is, why do they think they need to be perfect? Is that a leadership problem? Is that an education problem? Um, those are all things that we need to look into, but it all starts at the top. It starts at the top. It starts with the leaders. And I think I think a leadership class would be an excellent thing to be taught at veterinary school.
Interesting. Lots to unpack there. I agree with 99.9% of everything you're saying. Um, just so I can share some of your background as well. What was your research project for your MBA?
We didn't have one. We just did a lot of E to B's
Okay.
instead. So education to business. So we had a marketing where we worked with a local company. We strategy, we're working with, I'm hoping to work with Beyond Meat because I'm really interested in sustainability and the circular economy, like from nothing from the earth and not going back to the, not going to the landfill, but back to
Right.
the earth. Um, so we really didn't have we didn't have a project. We just were able to, I broke down NVIDIA in finance. Um, and we broke down Target in accounting. We
Okay.
broke down, so we worked that way instead. But the one thing I can tell you that I love, and I'm not trying to get any kudos, but working with these MBAs that were doing corporate stuff, and we're talking Harvard, Northwestern, Vanderbilt, all these different schools. The one thing they lacked, which Pepperdine teaches, is leadership to make a difference.
Yeah, I remember one of the first classes I took a small MBA program, not like Pepperdine, but one of the first classes was on leadership. And I, when I was in high school, when I was in undergrad, when I was in vet school, there is no way that expected myself to be in a leadership role. It really wasn't until I worked with John Hamill that I saw what leadership was about because of his involvement with the California VMA, and then he got me involved and locally and state and nationally. And so I became more of a student in leadership. And I would also suggest on the consulting role, Tom Catanzaro, who's written the only book specifically written on leadership in the veterinary profession, and I worked with him. They gave me a foundation upon which to build a focus on leadership. And I concur 100% that we lack leadership. And I would almost suggest that we don't look to choose leaders when we look to choose students. And I think we do focus a little bit too much on choosing perfectionists as students. Now, here's my logic. To get into a good undergraduate program, you have to do well in high school. To do well in high school means you focus a good deal of your mental focus on education, learning, teaching, doing well in tests and writing good papers. So you take this pool of highly competitive individuals and you put them into an intro bio class at a university that has a veterinary school. And all of a sudden, that bell-shaped curve where you're on the end of, you're now in the middle of. But there's still a few in the end of the bell-shaped curve. Well, that few at the end of the bell-shaped curve, and especially if you look at organic chemistry, and I don't know how you did in organic chemistry, but for me, organic chemistry, well, C equals DVM because I got a C in organic chemistry and I still got a veterinary degree. But now we've taken an even smaller group, put them at the tip of the bell-shaped curve, and now that is the class, the highly perfectionists that get into veterinary school, which is taught individually for the most part. There are some vet schools that use problem-based learning and case-based work, but for the most part, you've got 100 individuals going through individual testing, and it creates, again, this bell-shaped curve where a good portion of them are in the middle. Thank God, because if it wasn't for the middle of the bell-shaped curve, I don't know where I would have been. And then you have this other group of hyper-perfectionist leaders that frequently end up with board certifications and PhDs. But I think we choose in this profession, in medicine, in law, we choose perfectionists because it's the only way to get into a curriculum that is based in the selection process mostly on IQ. When we as a profession, and I'd love to hear your rebuttal on this, we as a profession, and you did it well, and I did it well, I think, we were strong in EQ. And the EQ part is where you get relationships. It's where you get trust. It's where you get people who come and stand in your lobby and have a cup of coffee. And when you exude that to your team, they become the same way. The last thing you need at the front desk is somebody so smart that they don't listen to the client. So my feeling is we select for perfectionists because of the IQ focus when we really need to select more well-rounded individuals that have a good balance between EQ and IQ, which means they're willing to accept that they made a mistake. Now, took you a while to figure that out, but once you did, didn't it change your whole outlook from that standpoint? Because you developed EQ on top of your IQ.
Well, I have a couple things to say. Number one, my question is if we're accepting nothing but perfectionists into the veterinary program, technically, don't you think they're coming in already burned out?
I can't argue with that. Yeah, I mean, think about running on the treadmill for 22 years to get into veterinary school.
Right? The grind is real.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, boys and girls, adulting is nothing compared to college. You know, it's a whole it's like college grinding on steroids. You know, the thing is, you got to learn to live your life and make sure that everything's not going to be black and white. If you see shades of gray, you will live a happier, mentally easier life in general. Now, going back to your type of student as well, if I had 3 applications on my desk, the first applications I always would look at were Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, West Point, Coast Guard. Why? Because they have discipline, they know how to listen, they will do their job to the fullest, because if they don't, people get hurt. Those were the first I would go to. The second ones I'd go to are your Arizona Staters, your USCers, your Colorados, your Illinois, those schools, because in my opinion, you have to learn how to grind and have a social life. When you really talk about perfectionists, and I'm not putting it down because it's incredible, but you look at the Ivy Leagues, all they do is study. And yes, do I meet people out of Ivy Leagues that you're like, holy cow, you went to where? But that's few and far between, because they have the IQ, but they're introverted, they're overly organized, and everything's black and white. There's no sense of this shaded gray. So, the thing is, do we go back? I mean, you got it. you got to look at how we accept people. Um, there was a researcher who told me instead of, researching this type of stuff, I should research how many vet schools should we open in order to make up for the attrition rate that we have. And I was like, don't you think we should get rid of the attrition rate? But maybe if we opened up more vet schools, we'd get more EQs instead of IQs, right? Because your pool is going to be a lot bigger. Now, I don't know the type of education they'll get at these newer schools. But, the thing is that if you do not have people skills and you're not able to learn those people skills, unfortunately, people own animals, and you're going to have to learn how to communicate in such a way that they don't feel intimidated. They don't feel like you're not talking to them. You're like talking over their head. You gotta learn how to make sure that everyone in the room is involved in the decision, not just the one person. Because there are those clients where like this one person's making all the decisions and everyone's sitting over here quiet. You got to look at them and say, hey, what do you want to do? What questions do you have? If you do not know how to work that whole system, then it's not going to be a good thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have a vet school that's composed of everybody who got a C in organic chemistry and a vet school that had everybody who got an A in organic chemistry and see how that all plays out. Now that you got done railing on the Ivy League, remember I did my undergraduate at Cornell. So
I understand. And like I said, you went where? You're extroverted, right? You're outgoing. You're able to talk. A lot of these Ivy Leaguers that I've interviewed as veterinarians, I mean, I had one that tried to convince me that humans have anal sacs.
I'm going to leave that alone only because this is a G-rated podcast. Maybe
Hey,
PG
it's a
rated.
veterinary talk, and if people don't want to talk about anal glands and anal sacs, then
Can
we'll
you
have
get
to.
anal sacs at a bordello?
I don't know.
Well, that's the Bordetella. I'm sorry, given by the rabbi. Oh, the rabies. Yeah, it is interesting. But see, one of my messaging when I speak these days is really I'm in it to help the next generation of the veterinary profession do a better job. And more importantly, we need to bring fun back into veterinary medicine. We've lost that loving feeling. So I was talking about a lot of different things, but let's just return to leadership. Let's spend kind of the rest of the discussion focusing on issues and leadership. We were talking about, the veterinary school and class selection. We were talking about creating leaders and nurturing and nature versus nurture. I was a little bit of both. My parents were somewhat leaders, but quiet leaders. And then working with John and others, I became a leader from that standpoint. But I agree with you. We need more leaders in this profession, and we need some that come in with some leadership skills and hone those through practice, and we need to grow them. Do you see using your MBA and then your PhD to maybe help develop leadership education programs, either through the veterinary schools or through other platforms? So tell me what you envision, maybe how you can help grow leaders in the veterinary profession.
Well, the one thing which I mentioned before is a big desire of mine is to work with uh, young professionals. And I mean, it would be a humbling and honorable experience to get a position high up at a veterinary school to make a difference eventually. I was talking to my father-in-law last night about things, and it's like some I had Dean Valley, amazing leader, right? He was a transformational leader. He made a difference. The alumni loved him. Um, and then I feel as if Illinois kind of lost its way with leaders. But getting back to, I think it all came down to Dean Valley knew he had a class of, 85 students that he wanted to all make leaders. You need to change the way I would say some of these deans are approaching these kids, get them more involved in things. It was always with Dean Valley, it wasn't ask a question. Okay, here's the answer. With Dean Valley, it was ask a question, he'd ask you a question, and then it would become a crucial conversation between the two of you. And I remember, perfect example, he walked into our histology class and he was Canadian, Dean Valley was. And my buddy, who's still practicing in Arizona, he was in my wedding. He would always scan through the slides fast and leave, knowing that he would always come back. And back in the day, we had laser discs and DVDs showing what we're looking for on these histology slides to teach you a little better. But Dean Valley stops him, and he's like, "Where are you going so quick?" He's like, "Oh, I found everything." And he's like, "You're telling me you found a capillary?" And he's like, "A capillary?" He's like, "Yes, the things that are at the end of vessels that kind of just dribble everything to the tissue." And he's like, "A capillary?" He's like, "Yes, a capillary." And it was a capillary. But the thing was like, it became a joke and they both were laughing about it, where sometimes I feel as if, do these students really have that type of bond with their professors? Dr. Zachary, pathologist, Dr. Tranquilli, anesthesiologist, I would play golf with them all the time. Now, my wife would say, "Oh, you're just being a butt kisser," but I'd be out there just trying to learn about what they've learned in life as well. Is there still that? Gordon Baker, equine, he used to put on a golf tournament. It was always faculty versus students. And it was these great get-togethers where even though a lot of people clash personality-wise, students and professors, you could still see looking back that they were trying to create this bond, this group, this leadership. Like, hey, we're going to hand the torch to you. We want to make sure the torch is okay. Now you look at the profession, and the one question I always ask is, where did all these legacies go? Once veterinarians quit, they go open up a coffee shop in Wyoming. They go buy a fishing village in Alaska. And you know who I'm talking about with that guy. They are no longer involved in the profession. You look at the human medical side, once physicians retire, they usually get involved in boards. They usually get involved in pharmaceutical. They usually get involved in classroom stuff. So I think the leadership piece also you got to call into all these legacies who are also known as retirees and say, where are you? Where are you? Because you guys and girls, I'm sorry I say guys, but you group of veterinarians who have retired are from the era when veterinary medicine was golden. It was like, the roaring 20s. It was just amazing. I mean, technology is changing every 6 to 12 to 2 years. New procedures are being invented. And now, at least friends that I know, I mean, I think maybe out of my class of 80, 20 of us are still practicing. We're the other 60, right? So I'm trying to practice what I preach, get involved here, and I'm going to try to hand the baton on to all these young graduating vets. And do I do it via podcast? I would love to. Do I do it via research papers, journal articles, literary articles? I would love to. But I think the best way is for me to get out in front of these people, just like you did to me in 1990s, whatever that was, and make a difference in their life. Create that spark. Make them realize, holy cow, this is it. We got to get a group of people to celebrate the profession. These mentoring groups are amazing that are available, but the fact that you have to take a question, persuade, refer course, i.e., suicide watch, to talk to these young professionals, we're getting to them too late. As leaders, we are not in front of the eight ball. We are allowing things to become so bad that there's no way we're going to get them back. So as leaders, we need as many as retirees are out there. Reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. We need to get in back and somehow or another create this profession that is just something that people are willing to just give the right arm up to get involved in, because it's just such a wonderful profession. And that's where the leadership, in my opinion, fails. And like I said, I'll start at the vet schools. I'm not gonna bring up different organizations and stuff like that, because I mean the AVMA is amazing, the SCVMA is amazing, the CBMA does stuff, but they aren't involved in these lives of these young professionals 24/7 like professors are, like deans are. Like that's 4 years of your life living in an equine stall because your classmate wanted a temp taken every 30 minutes overnight, you know?
Yeah, you got to grab them when they're still malleable. They're still softened clay or marble, because once they're out, it becomes a little bit harder to mold them. I think I had Dr. Ettinger to my class at Western last year speaking at the business class, but not about cardiology, about the profession and life experiences. And I think, your messaging is perfect for veterinary students, to give them hope, to keep them focused on the prize, to give them some optimism. And I look forward to finding ways to engage you with the veterinary students at all sorts of different levels. And maybe the Veterinary Business Management Association, the VBMA, might be a great platform for you as well. And we'll talk about that down the road. It's important to have leadership, because leadership sets the vision. It sets the vision at the micro level, which is the practice. It sets the vision at the macro level, which is the associations, and it sets the vision at the meta level. Maybe I've got these all wrong. I don't know how to use the M words, but when you're looking at education. And so I do think we really need to start with leadership and vision. And there are issues with vision and direction. And it's very evident at the micro level. There are many practices that are essentially just a business going through the motions. And how do we help leaders or managers become leaders? How do we help managers become leaders? Because as I said earlier, at least watching your development, it's when you flip the switch and went from a manager to a leader, that your direction became much more focused. So how do we get our colleagues, whatever stage they are in career, whether they're an owner or an associate, whether they are working for a national company or working for themselves, how do we emphasize and grow and develop and focus on the importance of leadership to make a difference in this profession? Because without a leader, you have no direction. And so I think what you're saying in many ways is we need a better direction. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do to get out of the rut?
Oof. I mean, first off, let me respond to your micro level.
Yeah.
You know as well as I do, veterinarians are hesitant to change. They fear change. They don't want to change. We've been doing it this way for 40 years. Why do we need to change? The thing is, first off, at the micro level, at the practice level, you have to have veterinary practice owners that are willing to listen, absorb, be humble, and change. You've been at this a lot longer than I have. Is that easy?
Nope.
No, it isn't, right? So that's first. Um, you know, the problem is also, do I have ideas? Sure. But, people probably be like, oh, that's crazy. Well, we might as well think of crazy right now because I don't like the way the profession's going, right? Why don't we have more general practitioners teaching classes in veterinary schools?
Is that a rhetorical question, or do you want me to answer that?
I would love to know the answer.
Because most general practitioners are too busy being busy to teach, number one. Number two, we have a hard enough time getting specialists to teach now because the earning opportunities are so much greater in private business than they are in education. So I was talking to a specialist yesterday who had been on faculty at a university, is now in private practice. It was a 75% pay cut to be at a university versus in private practice. So, in answer to your question, I guess it's money.
And that's the thing. And the thing is like, okay, well, you can't do anything about the money because universities are usually state owned, government owned entities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do anything about that unless private equity comes in and starts buying out the states, which at their debt level that they have in general, private equity sitting at $9 trillion in debt, they could probably start buying out states because banks will loan them money. But but the thing is, I I'm pretty sure, Peter, if you would invite general practitioners to come in to do a lecture or two, they would.
Absolutely.
I think if I'm not telling them they're going to teach pharmacology, but let them come in and tell you their stories about pharmacology. Let them tell them about the time that someone broke your window, stole your, amorphine, and wanted to know how to use it when they called the next day. Like my veterinarian prescribed me morphine. I don't know how to use it. I would have died to see that guy vomiting and pooping all over the place. Like their parasitology would be another cool thing. Like the fact that a client came in and he's like, I don't know what's going on with my poop. He took a picture of his poop in the toilet and wanted me to diagnose what's going on. And I had to go to the bathroom after that one. I actually had my boss finish up that appointment. So, I mean, I think there's ways we can I'm not saying just, 180-degree change everything, but get the people that are out there actually fighting the fight in front of these students that are about to fight the fight. And I don't think, I think specialty is amazing. And I don't think I could honestly relate to people who want to become specialists, but not everyone's going to become a specialist. I think I can relate to those who want to do general family practice, right? Just get out there, bring in general practitioners, open your doors, let them come in and tell their stories. Have the school buy everyone pizza and have someone come in like yourself and do a lecture. Um, I think if students start hearing those stories the first, second, third week of vet school, their idea once they get that diploma of what the profession truly is going to be like, they're more prepared. Like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for that guy to bring me that picture of poop and to see me. The biggest thing I would tell them is you can't make everybody happy. As a leader, I know my practice could not make every client happy. As soon as you learn that, you're good. We used to joke. I mean, I remember Yelp sent us this sticker that says people love us on Yelp. And one of my employees put a big X and put hate, and we put it on our window. Because I, as a leader, instilled the beliefs in my people that we are doing excellent. There are just some people that want above and beyond or don't see our vision the way that I did for you. And I mean, there's another fun word you could say as a leader, vision. How many practices have vision statements? Forget mission statements. Vision. What was your vision when you bought this practice? What did you see was going to happen? What are you going to do to have your followers as a transformational leader, not a transactional leader, transformational leader? What are you going to do to transform your associates, your manager, your receptionists, your technicians, your kennel people? What are you going to do to have them believe in that vision and work on that vision? Because once you have a vision, the mission's easy. The execution's hard.
Yeah, you're speaking my language in many ways. And what we did at Western is I have a career panel where I have veterinarians come in that are in private practice and specialists and zoo, and just to give the students a chance to, and they're all Western grads. So I'm helping Western grads see what Western brings to the fore. And that's why I went back to Illinois, and I'm going back in April to speak to the VBMA as well. You should come along with me, just to hang out at university.
Gambana?
Yeah, it may be towards the end of basketball season. We'll see. But I concur. I mean, I really do think it takes our generation, and your generation being a little bit younger than mine, we need to be cheerleaders for the next generation. And I don't think we've done that. And I think we're losing a younger generation of cheerleaders for any of a variety of different ways. But it takes the John Hamills to influence me. It takes me to influence you, and it'll take you to influence the next generation, that this is a great profession that can do great things, and that all the naysayers, well, you can change that, because you can have fun. You can determine your direction, because as a leader, you have created a vision, and you've created a vision for your practice, and you've created a vision for your team. And in your case, you've influenced 24 other practices with young veterinarians and a plethora of technicians as well. We can control and define our future if we look through the windshield. Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time looking through the rearview mirror. And so I really do think it takes you to be the driver, me to be the driver, and others to be the drivers as leaders to get the profession moving forward, and to then create more leaders and new leaders. And so I look forward to seeing you doing some leadership talks and talking about transformational leadership, not transactional leadership. And I look forward to seeing you help others create a vision, not just for their practice, but for the profession. And I really look forward to seeing the next permutation of Dr. G, as you go out there and be an influencer and a disruptor, and maybe you've been very filtered today. Thank you. And maybe learn how to be what you want to be, which is a difference maker for the profession. So I look forward to all of that down the road. So I want to wrap it up with two questions. One is going to blow you away, and the other one is just a very simple one. So let's start with the easy one first. In a sentence, summarize a message that you want the listeners to take home with them.
Veterinary medicine is one of the most rewarding aspects of professions you could ever be in, as long as you do not take everything to heart. Do the best job you can. That's all we can do. And remember, you will not make everybody happy.
All right, so that was two sentences, and I'm a perfectionist. That's okay. I'll let you go on that one.
Why say it in a sentence when you can sum it up in a paragraph?
You are an MBA. Okay, here's the final question. It's a question I've been asking just about everybody I've been doing a podcast with. Let's assume that in March of 2020, life continued and we didn't have a pandemic. Where would veterinary medicine be, or more specifically, where might you be if we didn't see all of the external changes that occurred influencing veterinary medicine. Where do you envision veterinary medicine would be in 2024 if we hadn't had a pandemic 4 years ago?
I probably would still be practicing, but not because I burned out. I didn't burn out. I just was done with that phase of my life now, right? But I'd probably be practicing because we weren't all of a sudden on the Autobahn of veterinary medicine, right? we're still in the Keys, driving down one, enjoying the view. I think the pandemic, all the problems we see now today, I think the pandemic just sped it up. So instead of seeing it in 2029, 2030, we're seeing it now. We're seeing it quicker. We're seeing it in larger numbers. So in a way, the pandemic was great for the profession, but pandemic was also poor for the profession. And the same can be said about nursing, human medicine, and all those other type of compassion fatigue type professions, even teaching, with the compassion fatigue. So I think the pandemic just, and to use your words, put gas on the fire.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Okay. Dr. G, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for talking about leadership. We really do need to just have our own podcast on leadership. I appreciate it very much. The listeners appreciate it very much. I want to take a moment to thank our listeners, and we appreciate each and every one of you. We can't do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, kindly let other people know. Share it with your colleagues and friends on social media. Also, please don't forget to leave us reviews on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews will help others, doctors, practice owners, associates, etc., find out about us. And until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact, underline bold exclamation point, in the lives of your patients, your pet parents, your associates, and your team and the profession. Wishing you all an amazing week ahead. Thanks again, Dr. G.
Thank you.